Hello, in today's video I'm going to be talking about my experience with birth control. Emphasis on my experience, just because I know there are people out there that will possibly go down in the comments and act like they know everything. I am in no means making this video to shame people for being on birth control, because obviously I was on it, but it has been a little bit heavy on my shoulders to share my experience and to bring awareness to what I have been through. So obviously I'm not a doctor, and I know a lot of people say that because, you know, we don't want people to come after us like, you know nothing. But, you know, we live in 2021 where a lot of information, a lot of education is available to us, and we don't necessarily need to be a doctor to know certain things. We can go on Google or research a book, and I think it's very important after I went through my birth control experience that really opened my eyes to take everything you hear with a grain of salt. And that includes getting offered birth control, any certain medication, anything, because as much as it can help you, it could definitely not help you, and you could have a bad experience with it, possibly die from it. Today I'm going to be talking about my birth control experience and what led to me quitting my birth control, which was not a very pleasant experience. Before I go into my story, I do want to say something. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but that doesn't mean you going into the doctor's office that, I'm sorry to say it, you should trust your doctor 1,000,000%, because putting your eggs all in one basket is not good in any aspect in life. We are also humans, and we can also research things. Just because birth control is recommended to you, it doesn't mean that it is a good thing. I hear people talking about birth control helped me with my acne, birth control helped me with my cramps, birth control helped stable my hormones, birth control gave me my period back. And yes, it sounds nice because it helped you out, but in the long run, it's something that you didn't really cure anything naturally. And our body is never designed to just always constantly have something ingested in it. And trust me, I'm not shaming anybody. Like I said, this is my story. I was on birth control, so I had to learn from my experience and my own mistakes. But if I can help anybody going through this or questioning birth control, I would just say do your own research. And just as much as there are good things about birth control, there are also very scary things about birth control, especially my experience that I went through, and very tragic ones where people have died from birth control as well. I know people are going to comment, you can literally die from anything. Well, I know, but I feel like birth control is very overlooked. This is just my experience, and let's get started. So in the summer of 2018, I was getting married, and I was thinking about the fact that I'm very young and I do not want kids right after we get married, and my husband was on the same boat, but I have come to the conclusion that I would go on birth control. That being said, I did not do any research. I only knew like of a few people that have been on it. They had somewhat decent experiences. I decided to schedule an appointment. I went in, I got the pill. Specifically, I got the birth control Larissa, and I was on it throughout the 2.5 years I was on birth control. Everything was perfect on my birth control. I literally did not change one bit. When I tell you I went on birth control, I had no mood changes. I had a period every month. I didn't gain weight. I didn't lose weight. It felt like I wasn't even on a hormonal medication. That is scary, because I was. Granted, I was lucky because I was like, yay, I'm one of the lucky ones. Like, a lot of people complain about getting acne or, you know, not getting a period, and I have a period every month. I have the same skin that I had, and I still do after getting off of it for a few months now. But I was thinking I was one of the lucky ones. Yeah. Well, fast forward 2.5 years. November of 2020, I woke up on November 23rd with my left arm being really tight. It was a bluish color. It was slightly swollen. And at first I sent a video to my husband, and I'm like, okay, something feels off. Like, you know when something feels off. But I didn't want to seem like the person that, you know, was so scared of every little thing that was going wrong with my body, because, you know, sometimes you get a rash, sometimes you cut yourself and you don't realize you cut yourself. You know, things happen to your body every single day, so I didn't want to overreact. But after going into work 5 hours later, I noticed that it was not subsiding, and if anything, it was getting worse. So I messaged my sister-in-law a picture of my hands right next to each other and asked her, basically, do you know what this is? She told me that it looked like a blood clot. I immediately looked up blood clot symptoms, and I had every single one of these symptoms. It freaked me out so bad. Blood clots are no joke. She then told me that it wouldn't be worth for me to go to an urgent care because, you know, how this healthcare system is. We didn't have healthcare, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the emergency room. It's so sad, but I felt guilty leaving my work because I was like, okay, I'm a nanny to 4 kids. They have no care for these kids. And after going through that, and I just realized that I am replaceable at work. My body isn't replaceable. This is the body that I was given. If I don't take care of my body, it won't even be an option to go to work. So I headed to the emergency room, which was very close to my workspace. They checked me in, brought me in to a room immediately, which was interesting because a lot of people were in the waiting room, so I think they knew something was up. In my head, I was thinking, how embarrassing would it be if I went into the emergency room with my arm just feeling swollen, blue, and tight, like something was about to snap inside my arm, and nothing would come of it. It's once again, you only have your body, so take care of it. When you feel like something's wrong, go in. I went in, it was probably close to noon. They took my blood, they brought me to an ultrasound. The blood did not show anything. The ultrasound showed I had a blood clot underneath my left collarbone. The doctors were pretty concerned because it is not as common to have blood clots in your arm. They're usually more common in your legs. That made me a little bit stressed out, and overall, I was very stressed out because I didn't think much of it to begin with. Then I come to find that I have a blood clot. Then I find out that blood clots in your arm aren't as common. And then after being in the emergency room for hours, I was by myself because of COVID restrictions. Some COVID restrictions just don't make sense. I was getting prepped for surgery to get that blood clot removed, and I was going to be alone there for 2 or 3 days. I feel like the COVID restrictions are pretty selective. I was very mentally like, I couldn't grasp what was going on. This is one of the situations where it's nothing you can see when you see me. Something's going on internally in my body that could be like life-threatening. Blood clots are not a joke. I mean, thank goodness I went in when I did. I don't know what would have happened if I, you know, just shrugged it off. Who knows? The blood clot could have traveled to my lungs or my heart, and I might have not have been here filming this video. And that's another reason why I just feel like, you know, this is such an easily recommended remedy for a lot of the female problems, you know, the cramps, the periods, but that's not the root of the problem. And that's why when birth control is recommended for those things, after going through this, it completely changed my mind. We'll get more into that later. I was getting prepped for surgery. I was in such a bad state because I didn't want to be alone. Like, who wants to be alone going into surgery? I was already alone for 6 hours in the hospital. The surgeon came in, and at this point, it was about 6 hours into me being in the emergency room, and he looked at my arm and he told me that it seems as though I'm getting some sort of circulation in my arm. So instead of going in an invasive procedure, because like I said, my blood clot is next to my heart, in general, opening up person, you know, it is invasive. So he's like, let's just try a blood thinner and keep an eye on your arm. If it gets any worse, then we'd have to go with the surgery route. Basically, he told me he doesn't want to go in and unclog the blood clot because I am young and he doesn't want my body to go through that trauma if we can avoid it. I obviously trusted him, and I'm glad I did. You know, he did give me the option to go in and just get it removed and done, but we didn't know what was the cause of this. It could have been where he would go in and he would see that I needed an even bigger surgery, and then my body would, you know, go through even more trauma. So I was like, okay, cool, like I'll just go on blood thinners. Anyway, moving forward, I was given blood thinners and I went home because I could drive. You know, I could use my hand. The next few days were really traumatic for me because I was trying to process what was going on with me. What the heck was a blood clot, for goodness sake? Because I had no clue. I didn't do my research and I didn't read a bunch of the articles of girls that have died or girls that have almost died from being on birth control and developing a blood clot. Now, there is another reason to why I developed a blood clot, but the thing that pushed it over the edge was my birth control. For those of you who don't know, like when you're on birth control, it does depend on what kind. A lot of them are hormonal birth controls that thicken your blood. So you could not have anything in your body that would make you more likely to have a blood clot, but just having thicker blood and sitting long in a car or, you know, doing something with your body, you could definitely develop a blood clot. That being said, I'm not going to go into too depth of what I went through because, you know, it's a long story. I was just informed, by the way, birth control causes blood clots, but let's not test your blood before you go on this to see if you're more prone to getting blood clots. At least they could have done that. You are responsible for your own research. I have a massive respect for people in medical field because I can only imagine, you know, working that job. I've only worked 2 years at a nursing home and that was just a glimpse into this whole world of the medical profession. I'm not diminishing them. I'm just saying that just like any other job in the world, you know, we need to think about ourselves too and do our research for ourselves. A lot of things are just said, you know, take this, take that, but here are these side effects that could happen, and then when they do happen to you, you do kind of feel sort of responsible for the fact that you should have looked into how many people do have these side effects. Is it 1 in a billion? Or is it more frequent than that?
Once again, I do want to preface that this is my experience, but if it is, you know, a common thing for the pill to cause a stroke or kind of be a factor into a stroke or a heart attack or a blood clot, I'm just curious why it isn't protocol for every person to get their blood checked before being on birth control, because I could have totally died, and there are women who have died from this.
So they put me on blood thinners to see if that would help, you know, make my blood clot go away. And within a month, I believe, and a half, it did help my blood clot go away.
And I do realize some people may come at me and say, well, why do you think birth control is a bad thing, but you take blood thinners? Well, certain medications obviously do certain things, and obviously the only thing that blood thinners do is make your blood thin, and the only risk factor in that is you bleeding out if you hit your head or, you know, if you get into an accident. But birth control is added progesterone and estrogen in most cases, and that medication has way more side effects to it.
I really do appreciate that I could have went on the blood thinner, but periods on your blood thinner, that's a whole nother story. So basically I went off birth control because of my blood clot, which after tests I have come to find out that I have a factor 2 mutation, which is in my genes. I'm more likely to get a blood clot, but the gene is weak enough where I do not need to be on blood thinners my whole life. You know, I most likely would have never gotten a blood clot if I was not on birth control. Doctor told me the reason why I got this blood clot was due to the birth control and a couple other factors, one being my gene, other working out, and it just changed me, I guess. It sounds so nice to have an easy answer for your medical problems or just a quick, easy fix. You know, here's birth control, here's blood thinners, here's this, here's that. But then after you go through that, you kind of realize, like, what is something that I need to actually change in my life that will help my body, the only body that I'm given, be happy, because it was definitely not putting hormones in my body just to prevent pregnancy. I was just like any other girl out there on birth control or thinking about getting on birth control, saying, I do not want to use condoms, I do not want to do this, I do not want to get pregnant. But let me tell you, it's not worth the traumatic experience that I went through. I know some people that I follow, they have said that they have been on birth control for 10 years and their body is doing, you know, great. And it might be so, like their body might be doing just fine. But it doesn't sit well with me that, you know, putting those hormones into your body for such a long time, it just doesn't really belong there. If I would have done some of my research and found out that maybe it's best either to get my blood tested to see if I was prone to blood clots, or, you know, maybe if my doctor told me that, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today. I know things happen for a reason, and that is why I'm making this video, because if you are planning to go on birth control, if you are going to take that risk, just know that you may go through what I went through, because gosh, the amount of articles and videos that I have seen of people almost dying, it is so scary. It's just, when you go through something like this, you're just not the same, and you just can't ignore how many women go through, you know, bad side effects of birth control. I do not want anybody to go through what I went through. Every single day I wake up and I'm like scared to get a blood clot, and it's very unlikely that it would happen, but I just can't help it. Every single time I like check my arm and I check to make sure that it's not so tense and it's not turning blue. I don't want that for anybody. I'm not a perfect person. I make mistakes. Did still want to share this if it could help one person. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask your doctor 1,000 questions. And if it means that it'll save you your life, it's totally worth it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys, and the love that some of you have given me when I was in the emergency room. YouTube is my therapy while I was in the emergency room, and that week after, I was going through a lot of things mentally, and YouTube was my getaway place, uploading and watching. So thank you guys for that, and yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.